As a young man, Bashar could never have imagined he would one day become an authoritarian president, a dictator, some would say, in a country utterly destroyed by war. His older brother, Basil, had been the intended successor of Hafez al-Assad. In the 1980s, Western diplomats remember meeting him socially without realizing who he was. Bashar was not seeking the limelight and was set on qualifying as an ophthalmologist, sidestepping the family sphere of politics and power. In January 1994, Basil, the brilliant heir apparent, who was also known for his temper, died in a car crash on his way to the airport. Assad was summoned from London to Damascus immediately. He was quickly groomed and prepared for power, and 6 years later, Hafez passed away. Bashar al-Assad took over. At first, he hinted that he would relax the reins of the regime and introduce more freedoms. Some criticism of Assad was permitted, although quickly tolerance disappeared. Assad and the old guard locked down on any dissent. Opponents were jailed. The so-called Damascus Spring did not live long. In 2005, Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri was assassinated. All eyes turned to Syria. Assad became a pariah in the eyes of the international community. But by early 2011, as the conflict began, Bashar had managed to restore some respectability. 3 months earlier, he had dined at a chic Paris restaurant with President Nicolas Sarkozy. The photographs were published in Paris Match. A few days after the revolution began, a meeting was called at Assad's residence. The ruling clan assembled to decide how to manage the uprising. A very tough line was agreed upon. It was out of the question to show any weakness or give an inch. The once mild-mannered student living an ordinary life in London had turned into a violent and ruthless dictator. Yet in 2013, his former Vice President Abdel Halim Khadam said that Assad was a nervous wreck, constantly paranoid, and routinely used food tasters out of fear of being poisoned. Most who had met him had seen a different persona, a confident and relaxed leader. That was the image Assad sought to project. He must seem in complete control over his country. He invited journalists for picturesque interviews at a house on a hilltop surrounding Damascus. The security detail was barely visible, and it was the same at his official residence. The propaganda machine was in full throttle. And while Assad has admitted some errors in his handling of the conflict, he has never criticized his methods. Now, elections are to be held this year to demonstrate that Syria is returning to democracy, however relative that might be while he remains in power.